calculate the standard deviation and variance of the sample data shown to 2 decimal places. All right, so the standard deviation and the variance. In order to get these, we'll take advantage of the calculator. And there's one place that we can get that in the calculator all at once. So what I will do is start putting the data into a list. So hit Stat, Edit, so the first item there. If you already have stuff in your list, just go until you highlight the name, hit Clear, and Enter. And that'll remove the stuff out. And then, just like a spreadsheet, you can just start typing in your data into the list. I'll do it as quickly as I can here. But I also want to make sure I'm getting it in accurately. Because unfortunately, if the calculator is doing all the work for you, you have to make sure you give it the correct data, otherwise your answers will be incorrect. So if I hit Stat at this point, now that the data's in, I can do some calculations if I go over to the Calc menu. And the first item, 1var_stats, that's exactly what I want. Now, if you see this menu, that's great. Your data is in list L1, at least that's where I put it. If you put it elsewhere, update that. We don't have a frequency list, so make sure that's blank. You can just hit Clear. If you didn't see this menu show up, that's okay too. Just hit 2nd and 1, and that will put L1 adjacent to the function 1var_stats on screen, and then press Enter. You'll end up in the same spot that we are right here. Now, the information provided, we've got mean, sum of the items, sum of the squares, and then the standard deviations. One is for a sample and one is for a population. It should always be told if you're working with sample data or population data. If you're not, just assume that it's sample data because this is a statistics class and we work with samples of things. So anyway, SX is the sample standard deviation. That's what we want here. So 9.81. So just make sure you know SX is the sample standard deviation. The variance, the way that the variance and the standard deviation relate. So the variance is simply the square of your standard deviation. I'm just going to abbreviate that. And so this is even shown in the symbols for these things. So the standard deviation, its symbol is S. If you square S, then that gives you the variance. And the variance's symbol is S squared. So the relationship is even in the symbols. But regardless, if you want to get the variance here, then you can take 9.81 and square it. And that should be fine as an answer. So let's see, 96.24. But the problem is rounding any values before you do a calculation could introduce error into the calculation, giving you something slightly different than what the calculator or the computer is expecting. And so you might get marked incorrect for something like that. So if you want to make sure you don't get marked incorrect, then use more decimal places for your standard deviation. And the question is, well, how many do I use? Well, I would recommend using all of them that you see on screen. Just write them down, and then you type them in and then square. Or an alternative is, anytime you do a calculation, it's stored in memory. It's just how to retrieve it is the question. But this button that says vars, it stands for variables. And it's all the variables that the calculator uses for internal storage. So if you come down to the variables relating to statistics, then you'll find different things that are used there. So if you, under the XY data, if you look here at the third item, there's SX. So that is the standard deviation from the previous calculation, which is approximately 9.81. And actually, I'll show you here before I square it. Oh, if I can get rid of that, here we go. So yeah, it is the whole thing, as many decimal places as is stored. So if I take that value and square it now, then I'll make sure to have the most accurate answer for the variance that I can get. So it looks like it is a little bit different. It's not much, but that could be the difference in getting the problem correct or incorrect. Now, many of the problems go ahead and adjust for rounding issues that you could possibly have, but not all. So the safest thing to do is always to save any rounding until your final answer.